Good morning. Today we're going to continue with triangles, and we're going to study congruent triangles. So the word congruent means that either two angles or two sides are exactly the same length, or the angles are the same measure. They're not equal. So when we talk about the individual segments, we put it all together, the entire triangle would be congruent. Now, just as a visualization of how congruent triangles work, is if I take this triangle and clone it like a mad scientist, I now have another triangle, and since this is an exact copy of it, we know that these two are congruent. And that's what you have when you have two triangles that are congruent. One of them is like an exact copy of the other one. Now, they can be set up so that they look exactly the same. They're oriented in the exact same fashion. Or if I take and rotate it, they're still congruent. Even though this one on the right, I've turned it upside down, so to speak, they're still congruent. All the angles would still be the same measures. Now, what we have when we have congruent triangles is we have certain segments congruent to each other. So in this one, angle A would be congruent to angle D. Angle B would be congruent to angle E. And angle C would be congruent to angle F. So when you look at two congruent triangles, you have to figure out how they're oriented and which part of the triangle is congruent to which of the other one. Now, usually you'll be given that. Here we know that AB would be congruent to ED. BC would be congruent to EF. And AC would be congruent to DF. And we could actually list those out. And then all the corresponding angles are also congruent. Angle A congruent to angle D, angle B congruent to angle E, and angle C congruent to angle F. Now, in order to have congruency, I do not need to have every single segment, either line segment or every angle, listed. I only need a few of them. But they have to be in a certain order. So these are our triangle congruence theorems. They are on page 213 of your book, or postulates, I should say. And there are three of them you have to memorize. Now, when I was in high school, we were given these postulates, and then we were given individual parts. And my geometry teacher, Mrs. Hennon, would give us some information, and then we had to prove the triangles are congruent. This is more of an analytical geometry. You're just going to be given some information, and you have to tell me whether or not the two triangles are congruent and why. So, our three postulates. The first one is side, side, side. If the corresponding sides to a triangle, all three of them, are congruent to the other sides in the other triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. Now, when you're listing these, just use the letters. Side, side, side. SSS. That's the first triangle congruence postulate. So here, GH is congruent to JK, HI is congruent to KL, and GI is congruent to JL. Since all the corresponding sides are congruent, and because triangles, the length of the sides dictates the degree of the angle. If all three sides are congruent, then all three angles have to be congruent. So that's the first one. Side, side, side. One thing I made sure when I bought a microphone, I got one with mute so that I can shut the microphone off. I'm trying really hard to give enough pause time when I record this lesson, because sometimes I go too fast. I'll make sure I give enough pause time. Our next postulate is called Sideangleside. Now notice, here's the important thing to notice about this postulate. Where is the angle that is congruent to the other one? Is it in comparison to the two sides? It's in the middle. Notice, this is how the letters appear, or how it's given. A side, then an angle, then another side. Side, then the angle, then the other side. It has to be in that order. You can't just have any random, just have them lined up and say, well, I've got a side here that's congruent to the other one, an angle here, and then another side over here. It doesn't work that way. They have to be in that specific order, the corresponding sides and angles. Now, they're still that way even if I flip this around like this, because you have a side, then the included angle in between the other side. That's what we would call that. So you have to think about these objects as like floating in three-dimensional space. Sideangleside. Please. Well, the sides up, there's only three sides, so here you don't really have choice, because there's only three sides in the triangle. So if it's all three sides, then it's all three sides. Our next one, angle, side, angle. Now where is the side, the only side I have, and relative to the two angles? It's in the middle or between the two angles. That's why they say an angle here, an angle here and here, then a side in the middle, and then the other angle right there and right there. Angle, side, angle. Hey, Bill. Do you want to tell Sleeping Ugly to get up? Once you sit up, it's easier to stay awake if you're not quite as comfortable. All right, those are our three postulates that you need to memorize, and there's no way around those. It's not something that you can just like work through, compute. Like when we're working in algebra, there's a process you can follow, and you can compute things and figure it out and work your way through it. The thing about geometry, you got to have this stuff memorized. All right, so what are we going to do with this? We're going to state whether each pair of triangles is congruent. If a pair is congruent, we'll name the congruence and the appropriate postulate, which means that if they are congruent, I'll say triangle ... is congruent to triangle blah 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 by, and then we'll give one of the three postulates. So the first thing you need to do is look at this and say, does it match up to one of our three postulates? Are they congruent? Yes or no? Yes. Kristen, you're right. Why? Which one? Which one? Side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle. Side. Second one? Yes. So we would know that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF by side, and then they have the included angle, then the other side. Side, angle, side. Yep. That's it. That's how you answer it. Unless, of course, it's not congruent, then you just write not congruent. Are those two congruent? By what postulate? No, you change your mind. That's one way to cover all your bases. Yes, no. Well, what was given as congruent? In these two triangles, what did I say was, what was that, what are you given? What information? Angle, angle, angle. Is that one of our postulates? No. Angle, angle, angle is not a congruence postulate. These triangles are what we'll see eventually are called similar. The angles are congruent, but not the sides. And actually, if I take this one and spin it around, I made it intentionally to look really close in size, but are they the same? No, they're different sizes. And you can have that in a triangle. You can have that the angles be the same measure, but the sides be different lengths. So these are similar, but they're not congruent. So these two are not congruent. There is no angle, angle, angle. That's the thing. AAA. That's American Automobile Association, not a triangle congruence postulate. They're the ones that'll help you get a triptych or pay for a discount on some travel. If you need your car needs towed. That's right. All right. How about those two? Are they congruent? Which postulate? Side, angle, side. Okay. The angle between the two sides is congruent? Yeah. In order for this to be side, angle, side, I would have had to give you angle B and angle E. Is that what you were given? What were you given? What's that? That's right. Chris, what are those letters? What did I give you? Go ahead, say it. I'm not going to get upset. ASS. There is no ass in triangle congruence. It's funny, but there's no angle side side postulate, thankfully. Otherwise I'd have a Beavis and a Butthead every year just say, you just said ass. You know, that is not a triangle postulate. You laugh, you're going to remember that one because I said the word ass 3 times. So no angle side side. Now the reason why I do this one is so that you can see the difference between whether you have an included angle in between the two sides. This angle, you know, and we usually go in that's clockwise, yeah, clockwise direction to look at these, and at the angles first, then the side, then the other side. In order for these to be congruent, I would need to have been given this. Then, even though this angle's here, I can still have side angle side. Because once you have side angle side, you know A would be congruent to D and C would be congruent to F. I would just write not congruent. If you write no ass, I'll probably chuckle and I would not mark it wrong. But you have to somewhere, yeah, you have to somewhere say they're not congruent. So there's no ass. Not congruent. All right, 1 to 25, skip number 20. 1 to 25, skip number 20.